Hello, hello, everybody, and welcome back to Conquering Chaos, a mom's guide to self-care insanity. I'm your host, Sydney Crow, and today we are getting a dad's perspective. Welcome, Kyle Jetsel.
Thank you so much, Sydney. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here.
I am very excited. I really appreciated you taking the time to apply to be on this podcast and offer up a dad's perspective. As a single dad of 6 kids, you have quite an incredible story. Many of them, as you called your crew, seemingly feral at times, and I absolutely loved that. So I'd love for you to just dive right in and tell the listeners about yourself and who you are and just more about your family and your day-to-day kind of how you guys manage the chaos.
So my name's Kyle Jetsel. Originally, I'm from Dallas, Texas. That is why you probably hear I call it a Texas ghetto accent, because it's
I
kind
like
of Texan, but I grew up in the hood in Dallas, so it's kind of ghetto as well. It's pretty
that.
unusual, and I can't get rid of it. Yeah, but I guess my story probably starts with my wife, who she did pass away a couple of years ago after we were married for 30 years, which
Wow.
is
So sorry for your
fantastic.
loss.
I'm so grateful for those years with her. But my wife was I come from a pretty aggressive, when you grow up in a certain environment, kind of in a tough neighborhood, you learn to be tough. And that's kind of how I
Yeah.
grew up. And when I met my wife, she was the most feminine, wonderful, beautiful, sweet woman I had ever met. And I realized very quickly that she was kind of the anti me,
Aw.
and it was really could be a great match.
Opposites
And
do attract, right?
they really do. And I could see, and I don't know why she saw anything in me, because I was kind of an animal at that point. But so when we had our first 2 sons, they exhibited very similar attitudes, and they really were a lot like I was. They were, we called them seemingly feral, because they just came out wild and out of control and full of energy, full of life. They would challenge you on everything. They would, if they didn't like what was going on, they would run. They would fight with you. It was almost like they were, when cats are born, I think they'll defend themselves in the first 5 minutes of being born. A cat will, right?
Okay.
There's
Yeah.
no, there is no innocence to cats, right? They're ready to fight the minute they're messed with. And that was the way my 2 boys were. And it was really challenging for my wife, because my wife was this beautiful, feminine, sweet, wonderful, nurturing woman. Uh, and I remember as they got a little older, 4, 5, 6, the 2 of them, I remember coming home to absolute chaos, right? Or getting calls throughout the day.
Yeah.
These boys are out of freaking control. I can't, all those things that I think a lot of moms go through.
Yep.
And
Especially
my
with those strong-willed blessings.
just they were, yeah, they really were. And I realized, and I talked to her about this. We don't really want to, the goal is not to make them not strong-willed. The goal is really to guide them, because
Hmm.
that's a power. This is a powerful thing for our kids to have. It's a virtue if directed properly,
I love that perspective.
right? And so I would come home and she would say, I can't take it anymore, right? And her hair was crazy, and it was like these animals had taken over, right?
Yeah.
And I remember initially, because I grew up tough, and it was kind of how I was raised, my answer to this was to frighten them into compliance.
Mm.
I'm not a small man, and I wasn't afraid to use my aggressive behavior, because I think a lot of times we do what works, even if it's not healthy.
Yep.
And I would do what works, and I thought I was saving her, right? I would come
Mhm.
home and put them in their place, but it didn't take us long to realize. It didn't take her long to realize long term this was not healthy. But I wanted to be her hero. I mean, I was slaying dragons, right? I was a dragon slayer.
Mhm.
Now the problem with that was I would come home and lop heads off, and there would be blood everywhere, and she would be mortified, right? She was this beautiful, feminine, sweet, nurturing woman.
Mm.
And it caused conflict between she and I.
Okay.
And and
Yep.
and we really got to where she wasn't really happy with me. I thought she didn't have any ability to manage her emotions because the kids would run her.
Mm-hmm.
They would just run her ragged. And I'm like,
Yep.
if you would do this, they won't run you ragged. But she knew inherently that love and kindness and compassion was what they needed in the right format, right? So I would say more discipline. She would say more love. It created this conflict between the two of us. And the kids are smart.
Mm-hmm.
They would use that, right?
Yep. I can see where this is going.
The kids are smart,
Yep.
right? And it got to
Yep.
where my wife started to call them velociraptors, is what she and I don't know if you remember the movie Jurassic Park, but when they created the velociraptors, they put them in this cage with electrified fences.
Mm-hmm.
And they would systematically test the fences every 30 seconds, all day long, every day, in an effort to escape. And in the movie, they shut down the electricity for 5 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever, and they escape and kill everything on the island and ruin, right? And my wife
Yep.
said they're and it's not that they're bad. It's not that they're bad kids. They're just velociraptors. They're just kids being kids, and they're going to test those fences every 30 seconds for as long as they can and see how what they can get away with in our world, right? And
Yep.
because my wife and I were having this conflict, they were using that as a weakness in the fences and really creating so much chaos in our home that it became not really a happy place. It was a place
Mm.
of a lot of screaming and yelling and crying and running, and we wondered if we were just horrible parents,
Yep.
right?
I can
And
I
I
feel
think
that.
I think every parent goes through that at some point or another. Well, when my third son came along, he was diagnosed with severe autism.
Okay.
And it changed us dramatically because he was not just feral, not seemingly feral, flat out feral.
Okay.
And he was nonverbal, and he had no line he wouldn't cross. My two older sons were typical boys, and if they got a little nervous about the if the punishment was too harsh, they would shut it down. They knew there was a line.
Yep.
My autistic son had no line.
That's
And so
it's
the more
hard with the
aggressive,
behavioral.
yeah, the more aggressive I would get, the more aggressive he would get. He would throw bricks at me. He would smash his head through windows.
Mm.
He would scream bloody murder, and we wouldn't even know what was going on. And it was at that, I remember one morning there was kind of a tipping point in our family one morning where he woke us up with a blood curdling scream, and we didn't know what it was because he couldn't tell us.
Mm.
And typically we called it a meltdown.
Yep.
It could last anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes, maybe.
Okay.
But this one lasted 4 hours.
Wow.
And every time we would start to calm him down, he would ramp back up and start screaming and throwing things. And he would chase us with knives. Nothing was off limits, right?
Yep.
And after we finally got him calmed down after 4 hours, I think my wife and I were so frazzled because the day is ruined, the week is ruined, possibly the month and year are ruined
Yep.
from this event. And we kind of turned on each other. And I think it's natural, right? I think when something's going wrong consistently and you really don't know what to do, you tend to want to blame somebody.
Yep.
And the
Have to find a reason.
easiest one to blame is the one that you're supposed to love the most, right? I mean, and we
Mm.
started kind of hurdling these threats or these insults at each other. If you would just treat him with love, he would calm down. And I would say he needs more discipline, and it was just it was conflict. And my wife being so sweet and feminine typically would cry,
Mm.
and it would trigger me to calm down. But in this case, she didn't cry. She was mad. And
Okay.
the conflict got to a point where it wasn't stopping, and we were arguing. And I thought, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to grab my keys. I knew I had to leave because the escalation was getting so much that it was overwhelming for even me.
Mm.
And I walked out on my front porch with my keys in my pocket, and I thought, you know what? This isn't the life I signed up for. There's no answer to this problem. My wife hates me. My kids hate me. I can't live like this. I'm not doing this. And I had my keys in my pocket ready to leave, and
Mm.
I was done. And I know in retrospect, she was done too with me. And I'm standing there on the front porch. And in that moment, I remember a story of a lesson my dad had taught me when I was probably 11 or 12 years old. and I was playing baseball, and we were just about to win the game, and I made a mistake. And the other team ended up scoring and winning, and it was my fault.
Mm.
And I went over to my dad after the game, and I said, I wish they hadn't hit the ball to me, because then we could have won. And my dad said something I'll never forget. He said, you know what, Kyle, that's not how we do things in life. If something is important to you, you never give up. You never go down without the biggest fight. If something is important, don't quit. You're not going to win everything, but don't ever quit. I remember that story, and I thought, but I don't know what else to do. We've read the books, right? We've done everything. We've been to therapies. We've done all these things, and there's just nothing was helping. And so I did something else he had taught me. And so I went underneath. We had a big pecan tree in the front yard, and I kneeled and just started praying to God.
Mm.
And I remember very clearly feeling like God said to me, the problem is not your wife and it's not your kids. The problem is you.
Wow.
You can do it. Don't leave. Start chasing answers. Go after it with the same vigor you played sports, right? Don't give up. Fight for your family. And so I remember going back, and it didn't make me happy, right? I thought it was my wife or my kids or everything else. It wasn't me. I was a good dad. I couldn't, right? But the
Yeah.
reality was I wasn't managing my emotions, and she wasn't managing her emotions properly. And we didn't really know what to do. I went back in and I said, you know what? I'm not leaving, and I'm going to fix this. And my wife in that moment said to me, good luck. She was so mad.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, you know what? She's lost faith in me.
Wow.
I've got to regain her trust and her faith, and I will die trying.
Mm.
I'm never going to give up. And that was really a tipping point for me, because in that moment, I started to realize that she was not trusting me and I was not trusting her.
Oh.
And so I really started working to regain her trust. And it was interesting because, that shortly after that, when she and I started really communicating more effectively after that, because I realized she was truly unhappy too,
Mm.
right? The whole situation was not making her happy either.
Yep.
And so neither of us could manage our emotions in those heightened moments. And we needed tools that didn't exist and training that didn't exist. And so we decided together, we're going to create our own, right, tools and training, and we're going to work together. And we decided in that moment, I said, listen, the kids are the kids, but you and me are a team. I mean, we've got to be it. And we agreed to start working together in everything we did. And, it really changed dramatically the way we decided to parent our kids. And the first thing that she told me is, I said, listen, I need you to tell me not just what I'm doing wrong, but I'm going to be open to whatever criticism you have. And she developed what she called the criticism sandwich. Pretty interesting, right? And you may have heard this.
Yeah.
Right? She would start with the bread, which is, I really love you. You're a great dad. And then she would give me the criticism,
Yeah.
which was the meat. And then she would end with the bread again. But I really love you. You're a great dad, right? And she really told me that the thing that she needed from me was, she needed me to slay the dragons, but she needed me to do it in a spirit of love. Everything I did had to be done in a spirit of love. So if I disciplined, it had to be in a spirit of love. If the kids were out of control, I had to put myself in a spirit of love. And really, it was interesting to watch, because I noticed after doing this for a while, and it took a lot of practice for me. She was natural at this, but I wasn't. I was just, you're in trouble. I'm solving it
Yep.
through an iron fist. And she made me realize that it was better done in a spirit. And I started to notice that my kids don't react to discipline just for the sake of discipline, right?
Yeah.
But they react to discipline in a spirit of love. If they know you love them and you're calm and you manage things in a way that lets them, know that you're doing this because you love them, they start to change their ways, right? Now, it doesn't mean they're not velociraptors. They're still going to test you.
Yeah.
And they're going to ramp up, and they're going to try new different things. But as long as you're doing things in a spirit of love, number one, it keeps you in a state of calmness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier to manage those things. Now, what we did was we created specific strategies for specific things they did,
Okay.
right? And
Can you give me an example?
I'll give you a couple of examples. One of them was, my kids would like to argue,
As
right?
kids do.
As kids. And they can start arguing at 3, 4, and 5, right?
Yep.
And they were expert arguers. I mean, they got all day to figure this out, right? You and I
Yeah.
don't. We got things to do. And so my wife and I sat down and we said, okay, we created what we call the cost worksheet. And the C stands for what's the challenge.
Mm.
Okay. The challenge was the arguing, right?
Yep.
Our objective, the O in cost is what's the objective, right? So long term, we didn't want to break their spirit, but we
Yep.
wanted long term for them to understand that arguing wasn't the best way to get what they wanted, right? It was through kindness and love, and we needed to model that. So the objective was to teach them how to negotiate and do things in the spirit of love, right?
Mm.
And this we called the strategy was the no more arguing strategy. And she and I, we named it that's the S in cost. So challenge, objective, strategy was we named it the no more arguing. And we weren't allowed to argue, she and I.
Okay.
And the tactics were when they started to argue, we would stop and put ourselves in the spirit of love, right? And
Yeah.
listen, and then talk to them in a spirit of love and either say, listen, you can scream and yell and throw a fit all you want to. Here's how this is going to go. Now, if what you're trying to accomplish, if what you're wanting is X or Y or Z, there's a better way to do that, right? And we would give them those options. And so we
Okay.
started doing this with everything from arguing to one of my sons was diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder.
Okay.
And that strategy took us about a year to create. That one wasn't easy,
Yeah.
but we knew the challenge, we knew the objective, we knew the strategy, and we knew the tactics. And what we did is instead of them pressing our hot buttons and us getting emotional, we would say, oh, what's the strategy? Right?
Mm.
And we would go into the tactics. We would write out our tactics. First, we're going to do this, then this, then this, then this. And we're going to always the first tactic is put yourself in a state of love, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, the rest of the tactics become a lot easier. Now, what we saw was things only started to happen once, right? I'd come home from work and she'd say, they tried this today and I lost it. And I would say, okay, let's get out a cost worksheet. We'll write it up.
Yeah.
And sometimes the strategies, the tactics wouldn't really work very well, and we'd have to adjust and manipulate, or they would get smart and they would know what we were doing and they would twist and turn, right? They're
Manipulate
philosophers.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they would manipulate it. And so we had to get pretty creative, but things only happened once, right? They would only argue about something once, or they would only throw a fit once, because after that we'd create a cost strategy and she and I would work together every time,
I love
right?
that.
And we would create these strategies, and it gave us the ability to remove emotion in those heightened moments,
Yeah.
because that's when you start to let that emotion take over, and it's not generally good emotion when
Nope.
when velociraptors are testing those fences,
Yeah.
right? And we knew, and I growing up where I grew up, I knew long-term effects of not managing our emotions as adults, what that could do to families. Because I grew up in a family that had a lot of, right? Some of the kids still don't get along. So, I
Okay.
mean, there's conflict. Some people don't want to be together because the conflict grew into these things that it shouldn't have grown into, right?
Yeah.
And so it created consistency for our kids. They
Mm.
couldn't manipulate either of us because we both had the same strategy
Yep.
and tactics. And really what it did, I think the greatest thing for us was we started modeling how kind, good adults behave.
Mm.
I'll
Beautiful.
never forget I came home one day, my wife told me, I came home and she said, you know what, Kyle, I learned something today. I said, what's that? She said, emotion is power. It's
Mm.
fuel. She said, but when my emotions are more important to me than my love for my kids or you, then it's a problem, because emotions
Wow.
can build up and emotions can tear down.
Mm.
And when my emotions are when my ego tells me my emotions are more important than my love, it's a big problem. And these strategies were helping us learn how to manage our emotions in those moments so that we could be the very best parents possible, right? And so really the whole framework of using these strategies, these cost formula, and really for us, the interesting thing was we thought we were so unique, right? I mean, kids on the spectrum, wild animal boys, and we were. Every kid is unique. Every kid is different.
Yeah.
And they need unique and different ways of you to manage them. And our cost formula, what's the challenge? What's the objective? What's the strategy? What's the tactics? Helped us to create unique, very individualized strategies for each of our kids so that we could give them what they needed. And, my older sons now are married and out of the house. One is super creative, ambitious. He was a nightmare as a kid, at least early,
Yeah.
until we learned some of these things. And once we learned these things, it gave him direction.
Yeah.
And now he's a script writer, and he does all these wonderful things that let him explore his creativity in a way that's productive, right? And doesn't distract him or make him think he controls the world, right? He realizes there are parameters. He's a kind, patient, loving man, right? And he's got a wonderful, sweet. Both of my sons are just these wonderful, sweet, strong men.
That's
And because I think we didn't, again, we didn't want to beat it out of them. We didn't want to.
Yeah. You didn't want to like dim the fire.
Yeah, we wanted that fire to glow bright.
Yeah.
Just we wanted to point them in the right direction. And through this process, we were able to do that. And so, as my kids grew and people saw the change, they said, "What the crap are you doing?" And I said, "Well, it's pretty formulaic and systematic and recipe-ish."
Yeah.
And they said, "Well, what is the recipe?" And so as we started to share that really grew into kind of what what I do now for families. So,
which is amazing. So why don't you tell the listeners a bit more about this? Because you're a parenting and family coach, correct?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I am. So I have a Facebook page called, let me see if I can get this right, Parenting Strong-Willed Kids. And yeah, Parenting Strong-Willed Kids is the name of my Facebook page. I just started. I've been doing some other things, but I'm rebranding.
Okay.
But I came from a world of, I used to call it parenting in a spirit of love.
Yeah.
Which we still do that. But yeah, so now, my goal is, I know, again, I could make a list of things that my kids did that are above and beyond, probably because I have a son who's more severe.
Yep.
I mean, defiance, arguing, cursing at you, pressing your hot buttons, running away, threats of suicide. Let's see what else. My son came at me with a knife before.
Wow.
He's hit me multiple times in an effort to control the situation. And through all this, because I've expressed love to him in those moments, again, that's not my nature. My nature, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in the hood.
Yeah.
My nature's fight.
Yeah.
But
You want to throw those fists up, right?
yeah, and it's really hard, right? When somebody
Mhm.
takes a swing at you, my natural inclination is to drop them.
Yeah.
But that's not love. You can't hit someone in a spirit of love, right? You can't
No.
fight in a spirit of love. And so, what I teach parents now is to create their own formula for success. Now, the good news is, because I've experienced so many of these things, oppositional defiance disorder. I've worked with one of my sons is severe autism.
Yeah.
So he's not even able to understand direction or
Okay.
counsel. So I have to model behavior for him more than anything. He's watching me. And so now I get to help parents who are struggling with these kids that are testing their boundaries and fighting and threatening to, threatening everything. I'll run away. I'll kill you. I'll kill myself. And this is where it goes. If we don't learn how to manage it properly at a younger age, these velociraptors will ramp up and up and up and up. And you'll be afraid to take away your teenager's phone because she'll make your life such a living crap.
Yeah.
That you're afraid of her, right? And she knows that, and she knows you know that. And now you're at her mercy, right? We see, and I work with families who are in those situations, everything from little guys, because little guys is where it starts, right?
Yep.
And that's absolutely where it starts. And if we start to manage things in a way at that age we can prevent some of those more harsh things. But even if
This
they
is
are in their
good.
teen years, there's the formula still works, right? Is
Yep.
give them consistencies, parent them in a spirit of love, create boundaries that are healthy for them and help them understand why those boundaries are there, and then be so consistent in
Yeah.
and loving in your ability to hold those boundaries strong that they will, right? They have no choice. They just they kids aren't bad by nature, right? They're
Mm.
just kids being kids. They especially strong-willed. My wife says these kids aren't bad. They're just doing what works.
Mm.
And they
Yeah.
want control because they're strong-willed. They want control.
Yeah.
They think we have control because we're their parents, when in
Yeah.
reality, we don't have control of anything. They just don't know.
Yeah.
So they think this guy
Fair.
or this girl has control. I'm going to get it by any means necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're so strong-willed, they're willing to push those boundaries so hard that a lot of times we as parents, we don't give them consistency. We cave or we get exhausted or overwhelmed or out of whack. And whenever that fence is not secure
Yeah.
and they feel that, they're going to break free, right? And they're going to start. They don't understand that there's a tomorrow, that these things are going to lead down a wrong path, or a path that's going to be difficult for them, right?
Yeah.
Because we love them. We discipline them because we love them.
Yeah.
The world doesn't love them. If they
Mm.
pull this crap out in the real world, they will throw them in jail. There will be no love,
Yeah.
right? And I've seen that with families who have had kids that are thrown in jail or have had kids that have, attempted suicide in an attempt to get control
Mm-hmm.
because they just don't have those boundaries that are solid enough, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of what I do, and again, it's all in a spirit of love. As much as I as harsh as I might sound, everything I do is based in love, right? And
Mm-hmm.
my kids know that. And that's
Which
really
is
the bottom line for everything I do, which is and I think because of my wife's ability to, I'll call it, engineer me. I used to call it manipulate, but she didn't like that, right?
no fair. I wonder why.
I said, you manipulate me, but you do it in a spirit of love and you do it for the right reasons. She said, but manipulate doesn't sound good.
No.
I said, how about engineer? And she said, yeah, engineer is good. I'm engineering you to be a monster who has control of his emotions and control and
Mm-hmm.
uses love as his most powerful force, right? And not fear or demand or control. And so
Mm-hmm.
her ability, through the love, she was able to engineer me in that way.
Yeah.
And because we work together so well, I think it's created a world where all my kids feel are thriving. They're, even as they are these powerful, spirited kids, they have these parameters that allow them to live these happy, joyous, wonderful lives. I tell my kids all the time, I promote fun.
Mm.
Nobody promotes fun more than I do,
That's
but
amazing.
there are limits we have to be careful of, right?
Yeah. It's almost like needing like the guardrail on the highway, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I want you to go 200 miles an hour if it, my rule with my kids is if it's legal, moral, ethical, and nobody gets hurt too bad, then I'll let you
Too
do it because
bad.
I want you to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Let's
they
go
know
have
that.
some
So
fun, which is
when I
amazing.
tell them that's not a good idea, and they say why, I let them question me too. Why not?
Mm.
Because sometimes I'm just lazy. I don't want you to do that. Why not? Well, I'm being lazy. You know what? You're right. As
Yeah.
long as you know the rules, go do it. Go have tons of fun. I want to hear about it,
Yeah.
right? Because I want them to go out and experience these fun and joyous and right, all kinds of experiences just within these parameters that are protective of them and will keep them happy and safe, right?
Yeah.
And it allows them
100%.
to achieve what I think is their full potential
Which is
without trying to
amazing.
control or demand or, because I know if you lead through control and demand and fear, your kids are going to want to escape. People want to escape that. They feel controlled and they want to escape.
Yeah.
If you lead with kindness and patience and love and compassion, they'll feel empowered
Yeah.
and
Which is what we want for our kids,
they'll
right?
be their very, very best. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I wish I could condense it down into 2 or 3 sentences, but hopefully I've done a good job of explaining kind
I
of how
think
we
you
try.
did. Yeah, no, that's amazing. So, question for you, because a lot of families out there that are listening, they're dealing with this kind of struggle day in, day out. And when you're stuck in that rut, it's exhausting, it's overwhelming, your cup is
Yeah.
empty. How do you
Yes.
guide parents to lead with love or put on that suit of love when their cup is feeling so empty, right? Because that's when I feel like I'm the most short-tempered, right? I can be the world's
I'm
greatest mom when my cup is overflowing, but if I've had a bad day and something sets me off, how do you encourage your member or your clients to lead with love?
I love what you said there, sets me off, right?
Mm,
Because that's your trigger. Okay. If you say, I'm exhausted or I've had enough, that should be your trigger, right? And I'm going to share a very specific strategy with you. I call it winning every challenge.
okay.
Okay. And I'm going to share with you the tactics because I think you can apply this today and watch what it does. Okay. And this works super well if you're exhausted or overwhelmed or tired or your cup is empty. Okay.
Okay.
So it's called winning every challenge. And the the steps are what I'll call APWEC. And you say it like a duck, APWEC. It's easy to remember. Okay.
Okay,
The
APWEC.
next time you get to a point where you've had it, I want you to think of APWEC. Okay.
Okay.
It'll be easy to remember, right?
No,
So
yeah, absolutely.
the A in APWEC is assume. Assume there will be challenges. Your kids are velociraptors. They're strong-willed. They are going to challenge you. It shocks me when parents walk around thinking, I hope I can get through that day without a challenge. That's just a bad perspective altogether.
Yeah, okay.
Now, if you do go through a day without a challenge, pray to God and thank him for your blessings. But don't be surprised by a challenge. Assume there will be challenges,
Okay.
especially when you're super tired or
Mm,
already getting frustrated. Assume, okay? That's the A. P, prepare yourself mentally and physically to win, okay? Now, what you do is you say, physically stand up straight and tall, right? Put
okay.
yourself in a physical state of power because you can't stand up straight and tall and feel bad or tired. It automatically triggers an emotion of, if you stand up tall, right, it triggers an emotion of energy and you're
Like
going
the
to need it.
superhero pose.
Superhero, yeah. So go whack and do a superhero pose. I love that, right? Because now you're ready.
Yeah.
That's the physical part of it. The
Okay.
mental part of it is to say, I can do this. I've done it before. I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to win,
Mm,
right? And that's the W in APWEC. Assume, prepare mentally and physically, and win. And you win through kindness and patience and love. Okay. So you stand up tall, you put yourself in your Superman pose, and you say, I'm going to win. So you get in that state of love, right? Especially when you're tired. You
mm,
say, how can I approach this in the spirit of love? That's winning, right?
yeah.
And now sometimes if they see you go into a state of power and strength and love, they're going to think, oh, what I'm trying is not working. So I'm going to try some other stuff. So they're going to be smart.
Yeah.
Don't think they're not going to try to figure this out. But initially it'll shock them because they
Okay.
usually know if I press these buttons, mom gets whacked out and I'm in control. I'm a 5-year-old and I'm rolling this house, right?
Yeah.
That's their mindset. So you win through kindness and patience and love, right? And the E in APWEC is energy and endure.
Mm,
Okay. One of the things that when I was growing up, I was such an angry kid. And I know you look at me now, you think, what? But
yeah.
I grew up poor and I was mad about it.
Mm,
After I graduated high school, I started boxing so I could beat people up legally. Okay.
okay.
Because I didn't want to get thrown in jail, but I was angry about my plight in life and that at that time. And one of the things they teach you in boxing is you always have extra energy. You don't think you do, but you do, right? And the way they taught you this is when you fight, you punch, 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 and you get punched out very quickly.
Yeah.
And they say, when you feel your energy depleting, raise your hands. Because if you don't raise your hands, you're going to get the crap knocked out of you. So you learn this. You always have extra energy to get your hands up, right? So when you're exhausted or overwhelmed or tired as a parent, you always have extra energy. You just have to call upon it, right? Put
Okay.
those hands up. Call
Yeah.
on that. Put yourself in that Superman
Yep.
state. Yeah. And say, I'm going to win through kindness, patience, and love. And the E is energy and endure. This
Okay.
this may last 5 minutes. It may last 20 minutes. But stay with it, okay? Just endure with love and kindness. And if your kid is screaming at you, say, you know what, buddy, you can scream at me all you want. Or, hey, sis, this isn't really going to get you anywhere. Try a different tactic, right? I
Mm.
know what you want. There's a better way to get it, right? And your kids will be
Yeah.
shocked because when you change their patterns, they change their patterns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they know what works because they're testing it all the time. I'm going to do what works. And I know if I get mom, if she's really tired at the end of the day and I get really mad, she'll let me have a cupcake, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, you know what, that's not going to work. Let me tell you what will work, right? And you give them these options. So you win through energy and enduring. And the C, and this is one of the most important parts, and parents don't do this. The C in APWEC is celebrate.
Okay.
When the event is over, you walk away and you go, yes, yes, whatever. Okay. I was a
Yep.
good mom. I was a good dad, right? I love them through that challenge. I love them. Now, if you do that, it'll give you more energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
How
Yeah.
about this? How about a challenge not sapping when you fight with your kids, it saps your energy.
It sure does.
When you love your kids through their challenges, it gives you energy, right? You're like,
Oh, for
holy
sure.
crap, I just,
Yep.
won- I just won that challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, you start feeling that there's energy there. You were exhausted because you were fighting all day, but the minute you start winning through kindness and patience and love, and you celebrate being a great parent, too many parents do great things and they don't give themselves credit. Celebrate your successes like crazy. We need that celebration to give us energy. And if you're like me, the hair on the back of my neck is standing up right now just thinking about it.
Yep.
I'm so energized by the excitement of winning, right?
Totally. Yep. There's been so many times where I said to my husband, I'm like, I feel like I got my superhero cape on. Like I did it.
Yeah,
Like it really
that.
does. It's just
And
like,
APWEC is so great because the minute you feel tired or challenged or overwhelmed, you say APWEC, APWEC. Say it like the duck, right?
yeah.
APWEC. What is it? Okay, assume there'll be challenges. Prepare myself physically and mentally to win. Win
Yeah.
through kindness and patience and love. Have energy and endure. And then celebrate the crap out of it when you're done, right?
So
I've seen
good.
so many moms go from constantly exhausted to feeling very energetic because they handle things so well. They know they're being great parents. By the way, fighting wears you out.
It
Loving
does.
gives you energy.
Mm-hmm.
Let your kids wear themselves out trying to fight you. They will wear themselves out trying to fight you, and you'll love them and have all kinds of energy. And then they bring it again, and you're like, well, good luck. I got
Yeah.
more. You're the one tired. You're exhausted. You need a nap. I'm doing
Yes.
great, right. And so it's, a lot of it is the mental state we go into it with, right. And that strategy was developed by my wife
Smart woman.
because she realized, you know what, when they challenge me, I got to quit letting it, right. She'd be at the end of a rope,
Yeah.
and that's her trigger, APWEC, APWEC, right.
Love it.
And she would get energized by the encounter, and she'd be energetic at the end of the day. I'd come home from work and she'd be grinning from ear to ear, and I'm like, oh crap, what's going on? The lottery?
Yeah.
Say, no, I APWEC'd all the boys like 7 times today. I'm like, 7 challenges? She's like, yeah, and I'm feeling great. I'm like, are you serious? Right?
Oh,
Loving your kids, even if they're challenging you, loving them gives you that, it will energize you, right? And so
100%.
APWEC, I mean, APWEC, assume there will be challenges because there will. Your kids are strong-willed. It's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
right? What we don't want to do is let them start to beat us down so bad that we just give in and they just rule everything, which is easy to do
It really is.
because they have all day. They're creative. They have all day to figure out, how do I, figure. And again, they're not being bad. They're
No.
just kids.
Yeah.
Kids are doing what works, and we're teaching them what works
Yeah.
by losing patience or screaming or whatever we decide to do, thinking this will shut it down. They're like, oh, I got next time I want something, or I don't want to do my homework, or I don't want to clean my room. If I get mom mad enough, she starts screaming and yelling, and she leaves, and I get to sit in my dirty room and I'll have to clean it up. They're so smart, right? They're
They
figuring
really
this.
are. Yeah.
So it's really up to us to use that APWEC. And again, I have strategies for defiance, for arguing, for pressing hot buttons, for kids that curse, for kids that threaten to kill themselves, kill you, run away, all these things. I've had to work through all this
Yeah.
because mine were the ultimate velociraptors, right? And no matter what I did, they ramped up. They were powerful human beings, right? And so every time they ramped up, I thought, okay, what else can he pull? I better be ready,
Yeah.
right? I
Yep.
need to be ready, and I need to write up my worksheet and get it ready. So when it happens, I'm not shocked. And by the way, occasionally they did shock me. And I'll give you an example. My more severe son on the autism spectrum, he has tried everything from threatening to kill me to threatening to kill himself to run away to, and none of it works, right? I still treat him lovingly,
Yeah.
but he wants what he wants. So one day he was upstairs and he was screaming and yelling, and I was saying, it's okay. I was patient, kind. And I saw a little gear start to turn in his head. And by the way, I've pre-planned for everything, right?
Or
Up
so
from
you
him.
thought.
Yeah. I'm a step ahead of this kid,
Yep.
but I wasn't this time. He walked down the hall, and I have a picture of my wife, a bunch of
Mm.
pictures, a collage of my wife on the wall. And she passed away 2 years ago, right? I don't know if I'll ever get over that, right? It's painful. I was married to her for 30 years. We built a top 1% happy family together. I love
Mm.
this woman, right? I mean, there's no there's no words to describe my love for her.
So
And
sorry
he
for your
and
loss.
he leaned back and he spit all over her picture.
Mm.
And I could feel the rage coming up, right? I
Yep.
wasn't prepared, but the heat, the rage coming up triggered me. And
Mm.
I thought, emotionless, I thought, this is what I thought. I'm going to tell you the truth. This is raw, right?
Yep.
I wonder if now is the time to punch him in his mouth. And maybe that'll send a message he needs to hear right now because it feels like the right thing to do. I feel the rage. I've never hit him, but now it seems this may be the answer, right?
Yep.
And I'm thoughtfully thinking about this. And then I think, how can I do that in a spirit of love?
Mm.
I can't punch my son in the face in the spirit of, now he's 24 years old. He's a grown man.
Yeah.
Now he's got the mind of a 7-year-old, right? He's severe autism. But I thought, I can't do that. I
Mm.
can't, I want to real bad. It seems right. It seems justified, right? And I
Justified. That's a big word. Yeah.
really wanted to, but I
Mm-hmm.
knew it wouldn't help. It would probably be more hurtful. It would be more hurtful than helpful. It wouldn't be productive for me or for him. And there's no way I can do it in a spirit of love.
Mm.
And so I walked over and I remember pulling my shirt up and just started wiping the spit off. And I just let him see my true emotions, which were pain. And I just went in, my tears started running down my face. And I said, please, please don't do that. And the look on his face went from furious anger, like he wanted to hurt me, to his face just went to almost compassion in that moment. And in his own way, he said, I'm sorry.
Mm.
And he within a moment or two, he hugged me. Right?
Yeah.
That I, there's no, the right time to use love in your parenting is all the time, but it's so hard sometimes, right?
Sometimes it can be. Yeah.
But when we can trigger those things, when we can let that anger or frustration or discouragement or whatever it is that goes into us to trigger us into a state of love and say, I want to be the very best parent. What are my tactics? Again, we got to remove the emotion and have a plan, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
why we do those tactics. I need to know every step I'm going to take. Because if I let my emotions take over, I'll punch him in the mouth,
Yeah.
or you'll spank your kids or you'll scream at them and tell them, go to their room and you're grounded for 10 years. Whatever it is we do, Matt,
Yeah.
we've all done it, right?
All done it. Yep.
We've all done it. But the kids are learning. They're these learning animals that learn, okay, you know what? I know how to get mom or dad out of sorts. Or if I can get mom and dad arguing about this, I don't have to clean my room or make my bed or brush my teeth or take a shower, whatever it is.
Do my
There's challenge.
homework. All the things.
Homework. Yeah. Homework was a big one for us too, for sure.
Yeah.
But again, what's more important than our kids in our lives, right?
Nothing.
Right? Right. And when you treat them in a spirit of love, when you start to change your patterns, they start to change their patterns. And they will test you in other areas, but they start to realize, I think all my kids know inherently, if we treat dad kindly and we can get what we want, we just have to do it in a specific way. And that way is kindly, with, not screaming,
Kindness and love,
kindness and
respect.
love. They see, here's what an adult should do. As I grow older, I know what my dad or my mom does. I know who they are. That's how adults act, right? When things go horribly wrong, mom and dad get kind and loving. And that's a wonderful lesson. They start to model that behavior and they take it out into the world, right? And then you get these reports back from people that are saying, holy, how'd you raise this kid? Oh, hard. It was hard.
Yeah, but you did it.
But it's going to be hard either way. It's either going to be hard screaming and yelling and arguing with your kid, or it's going to be hard you managing your emotions and parenting them in a spirit of love, right? It's going to be hard either way. I would rather get the good results that come from hard through love and hard through fighting and being exhausted and overwhelmed.
Tension. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That's amazing. I cannot wait to implement APWEC. And thank you so much for sharing that with the listeners. Before we sign off today, is there any last piece of advice that you'd like them to hear?
I think I've talked enough, Sydney. I think they've.
You've definitely given a ton of value and a ton of information. And I'm so grateful that we were able to connect, Kyle. So thank you guys for tuning into today's episode where we help you conquer the chaos one day at a time.